Hi, I'm Rick Higgins, and it is Scary Story Time. I am in Richmond, Virginia, which has more than his fair share of urban legends, ghosties, and other unpleasant things. And today we have 4 tales for your horror-seeking pleasure. Are they true? Well, I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. On this appropriately dark and dismal and rainy day, we start our story with the tale of the Richmond Vampire. This guy. Now, I recently did a video here in Hollywood Cemetery on, well, Confederate soldiers, how Richmond can change. There's a whole lot of good stuff. It's popping up somewhere. Go watch it. But I didn't know at the time that there was an actual vampire sitting here in a mausoleum right where I was walking. Now, there are several versions of the tale as to why this guy might be a vampire. The most basic and frankly most boring of them is that, well, he had sort of a blood disorder. He was run out of England in the 1800s. He was an accountant here in Richmond. He wasn't exactly the most, well, exciting guy in the world. But because of his blood illness, and I guess because people being people, they considered him to be a vampire. And here's what they claimed. See the WW pool on there? They thought the W's looked like fangs. It's a better version of this tale. Back in 1925, C&O Railroad was tunneling through Church Hill just over that direction, and somehow they awoke evil that lied within. And this creature with jagged teeth and just flesh hanging off of his bloody body was found crouching over this victim when the railroad collapsed, when the tunnel collapsed, and a group of men chased this vile creature down the river to Hollywood Cemetery, where it entered and lived in the tomb of W.W. Poole, and apparently lives to this very day. Like all urban legends, this is kind of based somewhat in truth. There was a guy named Benjamin Mosley. He was 28 years old. He was a fireman. You know, the guys that stoked the coal into the locomotive being inside the tunnel when it collapsed and the boiler exploded. Well, he didn't do so well. He wasn't wearing a shirt. He was badly burned. Flesh was hanging off his body. His teeth were broken from the explosion. And when he crawled out of the tunnel, people didn't know what he was. He was taken to Grace Hospital. He later died, and he was buried in, wait for it, yep, Hollywood Cemetery. So that might be how the legend started, but as far as if there really is a Richmond vampire or not, I'm going to leave that one up to you. And then there are the ghosts of the Byrd Park Pump House. There was a guy named Daniel Tetweiler who apparently way back in the day hung himself. And there's also an apparition named Elizabeth who sort of floats around the building as a little glowing orb of light. Now, lest you think this may not be true, this building was actually looked into by a paranormal investigator, the same guy who invented something called a parabot, which is some kind of containment system for disembodied spirits. Anyway, his theory is that it just takes 3 elements, water, steel, and slate, and it creates some kind of portal, this supernatural portal where entities can come from one realm into the other. Steel, water, and slate. I mean, it sounds plausible to me. Once upon a time here on Belle Isle, there were 30,000 Union soldiers, Union POWs actually, during the American Civil War. Now the conditions here, they weren't good. And in fact, if you were one of those who died, you were probably better off than those who managed to survive. Now, a doctor who cared for these patients described their conditions as being absolutely horrific. They were semi-nude, they were exposed to the elements, and it gets very cold and snowy here in Richmond, Virginia. He described their medical conditions as everyone being in a constant state of diarrhea and cholera and other diseases. He also reported that a lot of the POWs had just completely lost all sense of reason. They didn't know who they were anymore, and they didn't know how they had gotten there. Now, this island has been repurposed over the years, including being a hydroelectric dam and power plant. But now it's a nature park. It's where families and people can come and enjoy the cooling waters of the James River and hiking trails up and down the island. But it seems that a lot of those Civil War dead, they're still here. A lot of visitors, as they're going up and down these trails, they report ghostly footsteps behind them when there's no one there, and those apparitions that appear in photographs when there was no one standing behind you. Now, a lot of visitors report being hit by pebbles, which are thrown by unseen hands. And one person even has a recording where you hear this surreal voice asking, "Where are we?" So do you fancy a lovely walk on this beautiful island here in the middle of the James River? I hear it's really nice this time of year, especially when the sun is going down. And last we wind up at the haunting of the Gelato shop, back here on 405 Brook Road for your driving directions. This building was being renovated by a guy named Bryce Given, and as he was renovating it, he kept experiencing, well, things that he couldn't understand, things that he couldn't explain, like apparitions that kept going up and down the stairs. There were sort of glowing balls of light. The first time I saw it, I was checking all of the street lights and car light reflections and ruled that all out. It was just too bizarre. Back in the 1930s, this was a horse depot, and the owner committed suicide because apparently he couldn't take, well, automobiles infringing on his business of horses. So, he left this mortal coil, and the neighborhood seems to think that perhaps it is he who is going up and down those stairs. Now, Bryce was asked again fairly recently if he had seen the apparitions, and he says no, but he thinks that sort of maybe the apparitions like the renovations that he did and was pretty happy with the building. I think ghosts just don't like gelato ice cream. And that makes my last two videos to you guys all about ghosts and ghosties of Richmond, Virginia. And I tell you, this city loves its history, and nothing says history like, well, cemeteries and dead Union soldiers wandering around throwing rocks at you, now does it? So I also want you to encourage you. I want you to go watch this other video that I made, about a week ago, all about Hollywood Cemetery and the other fun dead things that happen in this city. It's popping up all around you. And with that, be healthy, be happy, and we will see you real soon. And I promise, no more ghosties, unless there's one behind me. And then we're really going to have to do another video on that.